Hi guys, it's Callum back for Gossers Do Football. Today I'll be speaking about the rebuild that's currently going on at Crystal Palace. Clearly, this summer there's going to be a massive rebuild due to the amount of contracts that are expiring, including the manager's contracts and all the coaching staff, as well as the clear intent to sign new players. We've been linked to a fair few. I think it's quite apparent we've got money now to spend, having not spent much in the past sort of 5 years. I think apart from under Sam Allardyce, every manager has spent, including Roy, who's been in for 3 years, um, probably less than 20 million, 15 million maybe. So I think after all of that, we have some money saved up, ready to spend, and this summer is the time where we're going to have to go and do it. So firstly, I want to speak on the contracts that are expiring due to obviously this being sort of the biggest contested point on Twitter. Everyone wants to speak about it. No one knows who's going to sign and who's not, who's going to leave. I just want to go through and sort of say who I think will and who I think won't. So firstly, Wayne Hennessy. He's not going to sign, to be honest. I think as soon as he got that long-term injury that he picked up in the summer, and we went and signed Jack Butland, that sort of sealed his fate. There's no need for him to be at the club anymore. He's not second choice. We have a third choice in Stephen Henderson, who obviously will rarely play. So to have Hennessy at the club is essentially pointless, and it's just again eating up wages. I'm aware he's not on much in terms of wages, but it's anything you can get off the books is stuff you can then spend on other players. Really, another goalkeeper out of contract in the summer is Vicente Guaita. Um, he will sign. The Athletic have said so, but it's believed that the club are close to agreeing a deal with him. He wants to sign. He wants to stay at the club. He's enjoying life in London. There's not really much to say about that. He's one who is in negotiations and probably going to sign. On to centre backs, we've got Gary Cahill, who I believe will sign. I want to sign. I think he's an important player in the squad, an important player in the defence, one who we need to have at the back. He brings sort of an element of calmness, composure, experience to the back line, really. In a back line that I think the average age is about 31, he is older, but his sort of experience at club level and international level is crucial, and you can see him at times almost coaching other players through a game. When he first arrived, he was doing it with Patrick Van Aanholt quite a lot, sort of saying to him like, "Make this run, come back, stay there, go," etc. Like just proper sort of leadership stuff. He's also the vice captain after Sakho, so I believe that he is one that the club will want to keep, and definitely one that I want to keep. Now, speaking of Sakho, he will be leaving at the end of his contract. I think he's been a fantastic servant for the club. Genuinely, one of my favourite players, especially under Sam Allardyce. He's an absolute rock at the back. Genuinely offers something that none of our other defenders do offer, in terms of his sort of range of passing, his ability to play between the lines, get the ball into the front men from the defence, and even like bypass the midfield, which is something that we struggle with quite a lot. Where when he's not playing, we sort of have to force the ball to Luka Milivojevic, who then has to turn and see if he can play that kind of pass, which he's not necessarily capable of. So Sakho was so crucial for that and has been crucial for that. But now I think with the amount of injuries that he's picking up, I mean, he came back against Wolves, played 45 minutes, and is now out for another like 3 months. So I think it's not really a thing that we can afford to be paying. I think we're paying him something like 110 grand a week. And to get that off the wage bill is actually quite massive, especially if you look at players that we might bring in almost to replace him. They would all be on sort of significantly less money. So for him, I feel if he doesn't go this window, which I don't think he will, there was links to Nice, but it seems like he's taken a decision to stay. But he will be gone in the summer. Now, Nathaniel Klein, whose contract actually expires on the 30th of January, he'll sign. That's another one that the Athletic have said is very likely to stay on at the club. The club are in negotiations with him. We want to keep him on, and it makes sense because other than him and Joel Ward, we don't have any other right backs. So he's sort of essential unless we want to go out and try and find someone and spend a fee. When with him, we can just get him on a free contract. Speaking of right backs, Joel Ward is also out of contract, and again, I believe he'll sign, and I want him to sign. He's a player who's been at the club for so long that he's almost a part of it now. Like, well, he is a part of it now. He is part of Crystal Palace Football Club. Um, he understands the fans. He gets the beliefs of the club, what they want to do, and it's just a case of whether the club want to keep him on. Which again, I assume we will, because it makes more sense to use the money that we have on positions that we desperately need to spend on, and therefore to keep players where we're sort of limited in certain positions. Keep them at the club, especially if they're performing like Joel is, um, and just yeah, just it limits the spending that we absolutely have to do in the summer by keeping players like Nathaniel Klein and like Joel Ward at the club to provide backup to them to each other. Onto the other side of defence now, and Patrick Van Aanholt is out of contract in the summer, and he's a player who massively splits the fan base. But I believe that, especially recently, that split's sort of been sealed up and it's almost all going one way, and that's that Patrick Van Aanholt should leave the club. Now, I'm probably one of his biggest fans. I've defended him quite a lot on Twitter, but it's undeniable that this season, where he normally lacks in defence, he makes up for it in attack. Where like the sort of runs he makes, the link up he can have with the likes of Zaha and Eze, offers so much for us going forward. But this season, he's not even offered that. He's been awful at the back, to be honest, shambolic in defensive areas. And then going forward, he doesn't offer anything more than we already have. He's not provided many opportunities for anyone, and when he has, he's overhit passes or rushed things. Um, he's not got into positions in which it makes a difference on the opposition defence. Like he's almost been marked out of the game. And then when they counter, they're gone. We saw it massively against Liverpool and Aston Villa. So yeah, he should be one that the club let go at the end of the window. With the emergence of Tyreek Mitchell, I think it just makes sense. We'll obviously need to bring in another left back, which I'll speak about later. But Tyreek has really staked a claim to keep his position in the team and has performed so much better than Patrick Van Aanholt. Into midfield now, and James McCarty is out of contract this year. It's it's a difficult one. This again a player that divides opinion. I don't massively like him. I don't massively rate him. I don't see what he offers for us. But a lot of people do, and a lot of people want him to stay on. I've seen people say that he should be one of our starting two in midfield, which I don't agree with personally. But for people to rate him that high, I assume they must see something in him. But I've got him down to leave. Now Celtic are interested, which it makes a lot of sense for him. He's 30 years old. He's Irish, so it would be going to a club which he'd be massively welcomed to. Um, and he'll perform well in Scotland as well. Celtic themselves need a big rebuild, and I think James McCarthy could probably be a key target for them and a big part of that, especially with Scott Brown now massively aging and underperforming. This year he's been terrible, to be honest. I've watched a fair few of Celtic's games, and Scott Brown he offers even less than he normally offers, to be perfectly honest. So McCarthy makes a lot of sense as a signing for them, and with the abundance of midfielders that we have at the club, it makes sense for us to let him go. Andrew Townsend is another out of contract, and another that I believe we should keep. What he offers in on the wing. It may not be sort of the flashy goal scoring, getting loads of assists, but he's important in terms of organisation. Again, another leader on the pitch. You can see him talking to whoever's behind him, whether it's Klein or Ward for the whole game, just they're communicating, making sure they know where each other are, getting in defensive positions, working hard, getting forward when they need to, overlapping runs and stuff like that. So I think to have Townsend on the right hand side, it offers a lot more than um, well anyone else that we have really. I assume like we've played Schlupp down that side a few times, but again, it's another position where we're not blessed for numbers. So to get rid of Townsend then means we need to bring sort of 2 or 3 wingers to the club, whereas at the moment it's only 1 or 2, and it's just an extra strain on a budget that massively needs to be focused elsewhere. Christian Benteke is again another out of contract player, which I mean this season he's picked up his performances 100%. He's been influential in games. He's chipped in with a couple of goals. Um, and you can see how well he works alongside Zaha in that front too. But in general, you have to question his goal scoring. You have to. As much as people don't want to do it because they like him as a person and they like him as the way of what he offers to the team, which I can definitely appreciate. As a striker, he doesn't offer us enough, and especially with the arrival of Jean-Philippe Mateta, it almost phases him out of the team. Now, the Athletic have said that we're preparing for life without him, and multiple other sources have linked him to other clubs like West Brom, and that move makes a lot of sense for him. Honestly, go and work with Sam Allardyce, who we know likes him and utilised him almost perfectly during his time at Palace. So it makes a lot of sense for the player and for the club for him to leave. Again, quite a lot of money off the wage bill. He's on something like 110, 120 grand a week. So again, for the club, it's a good financial decision to make, as much as it may be a difficult on-field decision. And lastly, Connor Wickham, I think it's a no-brainer. He has to go. People were saying release him when we released Max Meyer, and that makes a lot of sense. But he'll leave at the end of the season regardless. You can't have a player who doesn't play constantly just eating up wages. I'd assume he'd be on sort of 40, 50, 60 grand a week, which again, if you shave that off the wage bill and you have it to spend, you can get a good young player in for that kind of wage, rather than someone who sits on the treatment table. As harsh as it is, Connor Wickham's never been a consistent striker for Palace. Even when he showed that he could be, he went on a goal scoring spell, and then got quite a severe injury, and he's just never been back since. He's constantly injured. He'll play the odd game every sort of year or two, but it's not worth having at the club whatsoever. And then, sort of lastly, in terms of contracts, it's not any of the playing staff. We've got Roy Hodgson and his backroom staff, so Ray Lewington and coaching staff, etc. He should leave at the end of the year. I think everyone's sort of unanimous on that. Even the biggest Roy fans, which sort of, to be honest, it include myself, believe that his time at the club is over. He has done extremely well for us over the 3 years he's been here. Phenomenally well. He's been an excellent manager for us. But I think it's just time for a change. And with all the players that will be leaving and the big rebuild to come, I think it's the perfect time to change your manager. As I've said, Roy's been a fantastic sort of servant to the club, but it's not his time anymore. People are saying that he might stay because of the quote that came out of him saying that his love for the game isn't tiring or something along those lines, and he still wants to work in the Premier League. But at the end of the day, it's not up to Roy; it's up to the club. And I believe the decision makes the most sense for the club to allow him to walk at the end of his contract. In terms of speculation, I've got a list here of managers that I've noted down. I just want to sort of go through and say what I think about the manager himself and what I think about sort of his chances of coming to Palace. First, I've got written down Eddie Howe, who definitely I was sort of against at first because of sort of the way his teams were at Bournemouth, where they'd ship a fair few goals. They weren't particularly good defensively. They didn't necessarily play that good football either, as much as people like to think it. They might have played attacking football, but it wasn't necessarily good. Um, but in general, I've really warmed to the idea. I think we need a difference at the club, a different direction and a different style after Roy. I mean, saying that, I'm going to completely contradict myself in a minute, but Eddie Howe does offer sort of a new, fresh look about the club, and to come in with a load of new players that will bring with him, or that will come in at the same time as him. I think he could be maybe the most exciting option for the rebuild of the club. There's 5 managers written here. Eddie Howe is the top one, mainly because I just think if the club want to go in a different direction, he's the man to take us there. But then if we want to sort of continue as it has been and have what will definitely be the most fluid transition between Roy and the next manager, we have to go after Sean Dyche. He's my preferred manager, 100%. If you could give me the pick of any manager in world football to bring to Crystal Palace, it's Sean Dyche, honestly. Um, it'll be a seamless transition from the way we've played under Roy to how we'll play under Dyche, but maybe even more effective with that Burnley team, which everyone sort of tips every year to be struggling. He's he's got multiple top half or bang on mid-table 10th finishes, plus a Europa League finish, which is outrageous for Burnley Football Club. I know they didn't get very far into the competition; they were knocked out by Aberdeen in the qualifiers. But to take a team like that into Europe is what we've been clamouring for at Palace. Really, a manager that will take us further than we are, and not happy to just sit sort of in mid-table and see us through the season just comfortably. We want to aim for things and have some aspiration about the club. Now, Dyche as well would have more resources, better players, and just like a better sort of base to have his coaching around at Palace compared to Burnley. And it makes a lot of sense for him as well. For his time sort of to be up at Burnley now, he's been there for years and years. He's obviously a fan favourite of the club, but it makes sense to pursue a new challenge, especially one so exciting as this big rebuild at Palace. Now, Rafa Benitez has ended his contract at his club in China with the aim to go straight back into management, and I think it's clear he'd like to come back to Europe. Now, as a manager, he's won everything, I believe, everything there is. And then with Newcastle, he kept that side up comfortably when after getting promoted from the Championship. He did a really good job with them. But the only issue I have with him is that even so, Newcastle fans obviously love the bloke, but there are some that are happy to admit that he didn't exactly entertain them. Let's put it that way. His football at Newcastle was definitely worse, or let's say not as entertaining as Roy's football has been at Palace. So if people want this sort of transition away from sort of dull, turgid defensive football, he's definitely not the man. But while he's available, I don't think you can really pass up on a chance to get a manager of that calibre. My last two are both managing in the Championship and are both sort of exciting up and coming managers who I believe maybe this step might be too early for them, but at the same time could provide the opportunity for a step up that they want, deserve, and perhaps even need to further their careers into or up the footballing ladder. Now, firstly, I've got written down Steve Cooper, the Swansea manager. Swansea have been excellent this year. I've watched a fair bit of them, and they've really impressed me. Their squad isn't necessarily one that you'd expect to be fighting for. I was going to say it won't be fighting for promotion. They'd probably be in and around the playoffs, you'd expect, but mainly due to the quality of the league than the quality of their specific team. But Cooper's come in, and he's really got them playing good stuff, entertaining stuff, while also providing results. I mean, you see that it's not always entertaining football that gets you results. You see it at Brighton, but he brings good football, he brings entertainment, and he gets results. Now, when I'm recording this, Swansea yesterday won 5-1 against Nottingham Forest, which is massive. A fellow Championship team, obviously in the FA Cup, but a big win for Steve Cooper's side. And in the Championship table, they're second currently, sitting just behind Norwich with a game in hand. Now, the game in hand doesn't take them any further, but to be in this sort of position at this stage of the season is really positive for the club and for him. And I believe if he wanted to take that step up, if Swansea don't get promoted, I think a big rebuild at a club, a new identity and a new face could almost be crucial and would be a massive opportunity for him. And the second Championship manager that I've got written down, Valérien Ismaël. I'm not going to pretend I know how to pronounce his name, to be perfectly honest. But basically, the Barnsley manager. And now, this one is a massively rogue shout, and it almost definitely isn't the right time for him to take the step up into Premier League management. But it definitely one to sort of keep an eye on over the next few years. Barnsley finished, I believe, 20. Oh, I can't remember. I know they definitely they just survived. Basically, they managed to just stay up. And sort of every year, Barnsley are a team that no one really knows how they stayed up, but they manage it. But now, under his guidance, they're 11th at this stage in the season, which is massive for them. It's a really big step. I think everyone again this year touted them to get relegated. So to have a mid-table at this stage of the season and not actually that far off playoff places. They're 8 points away. He's brought Barnsley up and brought them through. Shows that he's clearly got talent as a manager. He's also ex-Palace. He played 13 games for us. Um, so it makes sense, sort of, in the long term, for us to keep an eye on him. Not for this summer, not for after Roy leaves, but for the future. The club also needs to look at signings. So, regardless of who we're bringing into the club, we need players. We've got a small squad as it is. As so is it? We filled a 25-man quota completely, which suggests that we've got quite a big squad. But when you look at the players in it and then the players that are set to leave, there's definitely improvement that needs to be made. We've already signed Jean-Philippe Mateta, a striker who he looks great based off just sort of clips that I've seen of him. I can't admit to having watched much Bundesliga football, and you sort of have to take it with a pinch of salt due to the way that certain other Bundesliga players have adapted to the league this year. But he looks confident and he looks like a goal scorer. And to have that business done already, an 18-month loan with, I believe, an obligation to buy, but there was some speculation about what it actually was. We're clearly showing signs of intent and good business will be done. Then there's players that are out of contract themselves this summer at other clubs. You've got Damian Gray at Leicester and Jordan Amavi at Marseille. Gray is a player that we've looked at before. I believe that the club had a deal in place, but a while ago this is, as I was reading. But the player didn't want to move south at that stage of his career. He was a lot younger then. Now he's only 24, which is good. He'll provide big competition for Andros on the right wing, as well as being able to slot in the left wing when we need to rest the likes of Eberechi Eze. He's free, so it makes financial sense for the club, and he's not a bad player. Jordan Amavi, a left back from Marseille. I don't know why I keep stumbling over that bit, but he has played in the Premier League before for Aston Villa. I believe he got relegated with them, but he's clearly experienced the league before. He's declined multiple contract offers at Marseille, and so it's clear that he's looking for a way out. And if we're letting Patrick Van Aanholt go, and we still need sort of competition for Tyreek Mitchell, it makes a lot of sense to bring him in. We've been linked to him as well, so It's not sort of just a stab in the dark of this player has played before. He's a good solid left back with good attacking capabilities. A bit like Van Aanholt, but probably better, hopefully better. Then we've got Michael Aliso, who is definitely the most exciting player in the Championship at the moment. Young player, at least. He's a phenomenal talent. I mean, there's a reason that Palace fans and Reading fans are sort of waxing lyrical about this boy. There's a lot he can bring to the club. He's the sort of profile that we are looking at when we've brought in the likes of Ebere Eze and targeted people like Bright Osai Samuel, who sadly has gone to Fenerbahce, I believe. But for Aliso to take that step up, apparently he's got an 8 million release clause, which is again a no-brainer for the club. Great financial decision, and just that he would be an excellent signing regardless of the price tag. Even if we have to pay 20 million for him, I believe this is the man we should be getting. Another area that we need to definitely strengthen is centre back, and another player we've been linked with is Ozan Kabak, if I'm saying that correctly. A centre back for Schalke, who are bottom of the Bundesliga at the moment. So when you hear Schalke, you're sort of thinking like they're a big club. It might be hard to get their players, but they're looking like they're going to get relegated. So he could be a snip. He's also been linked to the likes of Manchester United, which obviously causes a bit of an issue for us. If they want him, why would he choose us? But if we can go after him and convince him to come to the club, he'd be a massive signing to replace Mamadou Sakho and to come into an ageing defence. He's only 23 or 24, I believe. So again, he would last many years at the club and sort of be one of those signings who can step straight in, but also be one for the future. Now, away from ones that we've actually been linked to, I've got 4 players from the Championship written down here, and a couple of them are sort of dependent on the manager that we get in, but at the same time, they're players that we should be targeting. So my personal picks are David Brooks, Chris Mepham, Dale Fry, and Liam Moore. David Brooks and Chris Mepham are sort of mainly if we get Eddie Howe. Brooks will want to step up to the Premier League if Bournemouth don't get promoted, and at the moment they are massively struggling in the Championship. They're 6th, but Middlesbrough, who are behind them, have 1 game in hand and are only 3 points off. So if they win their game in hand, Bournemouth fall out of the playoffs. At this stage of the seasons where they sort of need to be picking it up, and it looks like they're slowing down. So if they don't come back straight back up, which is looking quite likely, David Brooks will want to step up to the Premier League, and I know there'll be interest from bigger clubs, but we can offer him things that bigger clubs can't. We can offer him first team football, a position that he'll like to play in, and a manager that he's worked with before should we get Eddie Howe. I think it makes a lot of sense to target him for the club, for the player, for a rebuild, and he's the sort of player that we can base the rebuild around. Fantastic young talent, a Wales international, and just a real like light spark in what was an awful Bournemouth team when they went down, to be honest. Chris Mepham, similar to David Brooks, is a solid player at Bournemouth, and again has worked with Eddie Howe before. Won't want to be spending too long in the Championship because he has got the talent to take a step up into the Premier League. He's only 23, so he will want to sort of make the most of this young age. And if he steps into our team, he'll learn from the likes of Gary Cahill, Scott Dan, who can coach him through games and really grow him as a player. He's got a lot of talent and a lot of potential, and I believe he's the sort of player that we should be targeting. Now, similarly, Dale Fry is a player who it seems has been young for ages. He's been sort of on the lips of fans for a while in terms of touting him for potential moves, and he is a solid player, one of the better young championship centre backs, where he's only 23 years old and is ready for the step up, in my opinion. Again, it will do him a world of good to be alongside someone like Gary Cahill, who can walk him through games, coach him properly, make sure he knows sort of the positions to be in, when to challenge, when to not, when to hold off. And learning from a European champion is never bad for anyone, let alone a young player taking a step up. Again, these are the sort of players that we have to be targeting as a club, young championship talent who can step in and be good and be made better by the club and by the players that we already have. Lastly, Liam Moore is a centre back for Reading. He's not as young as the others that I've got down. He's only 20. He's 27, but again, it's younger than we've got at the club at the moment. He would walk in as the youngest centre back at the club. He's been linked to Brighton in the past. I believe that deal was almost done, but I can't remember what went wrong with him, whether he failed a medical or I believe it was the same summer they signed Adam Webster, so whether it was sort of a decision made by the club. But it's clear that he could step up into Premier League football. He's been identified by other Premier League clubs as a potential target. And I believe this season, with the way Reading have been playing and the success that they've had relative to their previous years, he could be a player that wants to sort of cash in when his stock's high, if that makes sense. So earn himself a move while he's playing well into the Premier League and then prove himself there, as opposed to if he stays at Reading, he'll be essentially stuck in the Championship because once you sort of turn 28, 29, you go off the radar of these clubs who are looking for youth and investment in younger players. Now, hopefully, all of that makes a fair amount of sense. I'd like to debate it with a few of you. To be honest, I'd like to hear your opinions on it. So please reply to this on Twitter. Speak to me on Twitter. DM me if you want, because honestly, it's something that I've thought a fair bit about and I've wanted to speak about, but I've never really had sort of the time. I haven't even tweeted about it really. So I'd happily speak to some of you about it, your opinions, debate with you on what you feel about who I want to bring into the club and what I would do with the rebuild. But I think that will be it. Thank you for listening.